गुड इवनिंग माय डियर स्टूडेंट्स। आज से हम अपनी रिवीजन क्लास स्टार्ट करेंगे। तो हम स्टार्ट करते हैं चैप्टर 8 ह्यूमन हेल्थ एंड डिजीजेस। दिस चैप्टर इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट and in today's class we are going to revise the topic common diseases in humans. In this, about every disease, what you need to know. First thing, what are the causative agent of a particular disease, how the disease gets transmitted, site of infection, and the symptoms observed in the disease. So let's start with the diseases, that is typhoid, amoebiasis, and ascariasis. Typhoid, the causative agent is Salmonella typhi, which is a bacteria. Amoebiasis, Entamoeba histolytica, a protozoa, and ascariasis is a helminthic disease caused by worm, that is Ascaris. How these diseases they get transmitted? They are all the three diseases, they are getting transmitted by consumption of contaminated food and water. The mechanical carrier here is houseflies. So since the germs are present in the feces of the infected patient, if the houseflies they can contaminate food and water if they are not preserved, covered properly. Site of infection in all these three, typhoid and ascariasis, it is small intestine, whereas amoebiasis, the site of infection is large intestine. So because the site of infection is same, that is intestine, okay, that's why the mode of transmission is also same. Now coming to the symptoms. Symptoms में आप देखो, typhoid में sustained high fever is there. So fever is seen in other diseases also, like malaria is there. But in case of typhoid, the fever is constantly high, that is 39 to 40 degrees Celsius. And some common symptoms are there which are also seen in other diseases, that is weakness, stomach pain, constipation, headache, and loss of appetite. ये जो symptoms है, common symptoms है, ये दूसरी diseases में भी होते हैं. तो इसका जो specific symptom आपको याद रखना है वो है sustained high fever. Okay, and that is 39 to 40 degree Celsius. Typhoid, if the doctor doubts that you are having typhoid, so confirmatory test for typhoid is Vidal test. Now, in case of amoebiasis, again, because the site of infection is large intestine, so it leads to constipation, stomach pain, cramps may come, and the very important thing which is not seen in other cases is stool with excess mucus and blood clot. In case of ascariasis, the symptoms are internal bleeding, muscular pain, fever, anemia, and blockage of the intestinal passage due to the increasing number of the worms. ठीक है, तो सिम्टम्स कैसे याद रखेंगे हम? टाइफॉइड में याद रखना है कि सस्टेन्ड हाई फीवर होता है, ठीक है, these are some general symptoms. Amoebiasis में stools with excess mucus and blood clot is there, and in case of ascariasis, the worms they block the intestinal passage. There may be internal bleeding and anemia as the worms they consume all the nutrients which you take through your food. So this is about the three diseases which are related. In exam, in questions, you might get the symptoms and you have to identify the disease. So in this way you can identify it by doing comparative study. Coming to two more diseases which are closely related, like common cold and pneumonia. Common cold is a viral disease caused by rhinovirus, whereas pneumonia, it may be caused by a bacteria or a virus. The bacteria which causes pneumonia is Streptococcus pneumoniae and the virus is Haemophilus influenzae. Mode of transmission, both the diseases they are airborne diseases, and They spread from an infected person to a healthy person by inhalation of droplets or aerosols released by infected person. They may spread through sharing of glass, utensils, etc. Difference क्या है? Site of infection. In case of common cold, nose and respiratory passage means your trachea, larynx, pharynx, all these are affected by the virus. Whereas in pneumonia, the site of infection is not respiratory passage, it is alveoli of the lungs. So the alveoli of the lungs, they get filled with fluid. The cells lining the alveoli, they secrete increased amount of mucus. ठीक है, तो यहाँ पे हमारा क्या है, रेस्पिरेटरी पैसेज इफेक्ट होता है, तो म्यूकस सिक्रीशन ज्यादा होगा नोज और रेस्पिरेटरी पैसेज में, सो वो ब्लॉक हो जाते हैं, सो यू फाइंड डिफिकल्टी इन ब्रीदिंग. वेयरएज इन निमोनिया एल्वियोलाई में फ्लूइड फिल हो जाता है, जिसकी वजह से जो डिफ्यूजन है गैसेस का वो रिड्यूस हो जाता है. कमिंग टू द सिम्टम्स, कॉमन कोल्ड में क्या है, एज आई सेड नोज एंड रेस्पिरेटरी पैसेज आर the site of infection. So nasal congestion is there and discharge. Sore throat, hoarseness, cough, headache, tiredness. All these are the symptoms of common cold. Recovery period is 3 to 7 days. If the patient doesn't take any medicine, then also our immune system recovers us from this disease. Now, in case of pneumonia, the symptoms are fever and chills. Now, chills are also there in malaria, but in case of malaria, chill occur every 3 to 4 days, after a period of every 3 to 4 days. The specific symptom is in severe cases, severe pneumonia patients, lips and their fingernails, they turn bluish, gray to bluish, and their alveoli get filled with fluid. Cough is there, headache is there, patient is not able to breathe because the diffusion of gases is very much reduced because of the presence of fluid in the alveoli. Coming to diseases related to fever. Okay, so just now we studied typhoid where there is a sustained high fever of 39 to 40 degrees Celsius. In case of malaria, there is a recurring fever every 3 to 4 days. Why this is there? Because during this 3 to 4 days, the plasmodium pathogen that causes malaria, it causes the rupture of RBC, which releases a chemical known as hemozoin, and that is responsible for high fever. मलेरिया में जो फीवर है वो रिकरिंग फीवर है जो हर 3 to 4 डेज के बाद आता है. टाइफॉइड का फीवर कांस्टेंट सस्टेन्ड हाई फीवर है, एंड इन निमोनिया आल्सो फीवर इज देयर. Other associated symptoms also you have to study before concluding it is which disease. Next, let's study the disease caused by filarial worms. So it is known as elephantiasis or filariasis. The pathogen is Wucheria bancrofti and Wucheria mellai. So these are the helminthic worms. Their carrier is female Culex mosquito. Site of infection, lymphatic vessels of the lower limb and genital organs are also affected. In symptoms, there is gross deformity. There is no cure of this disease. The worm causes chronic inflammation in the lymphatic vessel. Next is ringworm. So ringworm is a fungal disease. It is caused by fungi of three important genera. You have to remember the names of these genera. One is Microsporum, Trichophyton and Epidermophyton. ये तीन genera के जो fungi हैं, they causes ringworm. Mode of transmission, these fungi, they are acquired from soil or by using towels, clothes, or even comb of infected person. Symptoms, Dry, scaly lesions appear on various parts of the body like nail, skin, and scalp. And this is followed by intense itching. Heat and moisture helps the fungus to grow, and thus this disease spreads to other parts also. Coming to the next disease, that is malaria. Malaria is caused by protozoa known as Plasmodium, and there are four species which causes malaria. You have to remember the names, that is Plasmodium vivax, Plasmodium malariae, Plasmodium ovale, and Plasmodium falciparum. Among the four, Plasmodium falciparum causes malignant malaria. These Plasmodium, they are carried by female Anopheles mosquito. ओके सो यहाँ पे जो कैरियर है वो फीमेल एनोफिलिस मस्किटो है. एलिफेंटियासिस में कैरियर था फीमेल Culex mosquito, and in case of dengue and chikungunya, the carrier is female Aedes mosquito. There are two hosts which carry Plasmodium. One is mosquito, where the Plasmodium completes its sexual reproduction, and the second one is human, where they reproduce asexually. Let's see the life cycle, which is very, very important. When a mosquito having the sporozoites of the Plasmodium bites a healthy person, so the sporozoites, they find entry into the bloodstream. Once they enter into the bloodstream, after a few hours, they disappear from the blood and they reaches the liver. So the first cell which they attack is liver. In the liver cell, they reproduce asexually. They attack liver cells, multiply asexually. Finally, they causes the rupture of liver cell, and large number of sporozoites called merozoites are released by the liver cells as they burst. Now these merozoites, they go and attack the red blood cells present in the patient's body. Again, they reproduce asexually in the red blood cell and causes the bursting of RBC and releases sporozoites in the bloodstream, which infects new RBCs. The bursting of RBC and release of sporozoites, during this time a chemical is produced by the RBC known as hemozoin, which causes high grade fever with chill. So every 3 to 4 days, as the Plasmodium completes its life cycle here in the RBC and RBC's rupture, they causes high fever and chills in the patient. Finally, some of the sporozoites, they stop reproducing and they changes into gametocyte. Gametocytes are formed in RBCs. There are two types of gametocytes formed, male gametocyte and female gametocyte. Further reproduction does not occur. Now, when any mosquito comes and bites to a patient suffering from malaria, along with the blood, they pick up some of the gametocyte. So through the mouth, the blood meal, it reaches their intestine. Female mosquito take up gametocyte with blood meal. As it reaches in the intestine, the gametocytes, they form gamete, and these gametes, they fuse, that is fertilization is taking place, forming the zygote, which divides and forms sporozoites in the intestine itself. Sporozoites later on migrate to the salivary gland of the mosquito, where they are stored. And when this mosquito again bites a healthy person, it again transfers the sporozoites in the bloodstream of a healthy person. This way the life cycle goes on. So here you have seen, as the fertilization is taking place in the intestine of the mosquito. So sexual reproduction is taking place in mosquito and asexual reproduction in case of humans. Let's discuss some of the questions related to the topic which we have discussed just now. First is, What are the various public health measures which you would suggest as safeguard against infectious diseases? आप ऐसे क्या पब्लिक हेल्थ मेजर्स लेंगे जिससे infectious diseases से खुद को बचा सकते हैं? So first is educating the people about communicable diseases. Second, isolating the infected person. Third, vaccination. And fourth is sanitation. Sanitation condition should be improved to avoid infection from polluted water and contaminated food. Then eradication of vector, if diseases are vector borne, so if we eradicate the vector, so we can control the disease. Sterilization, that is, the patient's surrounding and articles used by the patient must be sterilized in order to reduce the chances of infection. Next question. Name any two helminths which are known to be pathogenic to human. अब helminth means worms. तो आपको किसी दो worms के name बताने हैं जो कि humans में disease cause करते हैं. तो आपकी NCERT textbook में आपने पढ़ा the two pathogens are Ascaris and Wucheria bancrofti and Wucheria melai. Okay, next question, next part of the question is list two symptoms of the disease caused by any one of them. So let's discuss both first. Ascaris causes ascariasis in humans, and Wucheria, bancrofti and melai, they causes filariasis or elephantiasis. Symptoms of ascariasis is internal bleeding, muscular pain, anemia, blockage of intestinal passage. Filariasis के symptoms हैं chronic inflammation of lymphatic vessels of lower limb and gross deformity of genital organs. So as I told you earlier, आपको सारे symptoms, mode of transmission, causative agent and site of infection ये हर disease का अच्छे से learn करना है and you can prepare a tabular form of this. Now, how is this disease transmitted to others? Ascaris, as the site of infection, is small intestine. Mode of transmission is through consumption of contaminated food and water. This filarial worm is carried by female Culex mosquito. So, by the bite of female mosquito, the disease spreads. Next question. Which organ of the human body is initially affected when bitten by an infected female Anopheles? So female Anopheles है मतलब हम बात कर रहे हैं मलेरिया की. Okay, and the pathogen is Plasmodium. Question में पूछा है which organ of human body is initially affected? शुरुआत में कौन सा organ affect होता है? So it is liver cells. So which organ? इसका आंसर है liver cells. That will give you half mark. Then second part is asking, name the stage of the parasite that infects this organ. When a mosquito bites, the sporozoites of the plasmodium, they enter the bloodstream. So the stage of parasite which infect liver cell is sporozoite. By writing these two words, you will get 1 mark. Next is explain the events that are responsible for chill and high fever in the patient. So मलेरिया में जो फीवर आता है, हाई फीवर है और चिल है, वो किस वजह से होता है? वो events आपको बताने हैं. So the events are parasite is reproducing asexually in RBC. Asexually, it reproduces inside the RBC, causes the rupture of RBC, and ruptured RBC, they releases a toxin known as hemozoin, which is responsible for high fever and chill. So, writing these points, that is asexual reproduction in RBC and release of hemozoin by rupture of RBC will give you 1 mark. So the question is of 2 marks. Next question. A patient showed symptoms of, यहाँ पे disease के symptoms बताए हैं, constipation, abdominal pain, and stool with excess mucus and blood clots. So you can see constipation intestine से related symptoms है, and there is excess mucus in the stool with blood clot. So this disease is amoebiasis. So name the disease and its pathogen. So disease is amoebiasis. Pathogen is Entamoeba histolytica. Next part is asking, where do these pathogen live in the victim's body? तो ये पैथोजन जो है वो लार्ज इंटेस्टाइन में इन्फेक्शन का साइट है इनका, एंड टाइफॉइड एंड एस्कैरियासिस में इट इज स्मॉल इंटेस्टाइन. So the answer is pathogen resides in the large intestine. Name the mechanical carrier that transmit this parasite. So ये जो पैरासाइट है अमीबा, एंटामीबा, इसको कैरी कौन करता है? हाउस फ्लाइज. That's why the disease spreads through contaminated food and water. So each part will carry half mark, that gives you 2 mark. Question number 5. Name a human disease, its causal organism, symptoms, any 3, and vector. Spread by intake of water and food contaminated by human fecal matter. So see, in exam you have to read the question 1 or 2 times to understand it properly, so that you should not miss out even a single point. तो क्या पूछा है यहाँ पर? नेम अ ह्यूमन डिजीज. एक ह्यूमन डिजीज का नाम बताना है, नेम भी बताना है डिजीज का, पॉजिटिव ऑर्गेनिज्म बताना है, एंड 3 सिम्टम्स बताने हैं, एज वेल एज वेक्टर. सो 4 थिंग्स you can underline in the question paper. First is name, ठीक है. Second is causative organism. Third is symptom, and fourth is vector. Spread a disease. Which disease? So the disease which spread by intake of contaminated food and water, contaminated by human fecal matter. Fecal matter में जो पैथोजन होते हैं वो आपके स्मॉल इंटेस्टाइन को इन्फेक्ट कर रहे हैं, those will be present. निमोनिया, कॉमन कोल्ड, इसके पैथोजन आपके फीकल मैटर में प्रेजेंट नहीं होंगे, because their site of infection is lungs and respiratory passage. तो फीकल मैटर में जो पैथोजन है उनका साइट ऑफ इन्फेक्शन आपका इंटेस्टाइन हुआ. सो 3 इंटेस्टाइनल डिजीजेस वी स्टडीड, टाइफॉइड, एस्कैरियासिस. These 2 diseases, their pathogen resides in the small intestine, and amoebiasis, its pathogen resides in the large intestine. So you can write about any one disease. Either you write about amoebiasis, escheriasis, or typhoid. So disease का name, like here amoebiasis. Positive organism, Entamoeba histolytica. Symptoms, कितने लिखने हैं? 3 symptoms. Constipation, abdominal. So all the symptoms which you have studied. Okay, same way for the other. Question number 6. A 17-year-old boy is suffering from high fever with profuse sweating and chills. A 17-year-old boy is there. High fever hai, profuse sweating and chills are also there. Choose the correct option from the following diseases which explains these symptoms and rule out the rest with adequate reason. ठीक है, तो हमें सिचुएशन ये दी है कि एक 17-year-old boy है, उसको हाई फीवर है, he is suffering from high fever and there is sweating as well as chills. So which among the following 3 the disease is the boy is suffering from? Is it typhoid, viral fever, or malaria? If you say no for typhoid, you have to give reason. So whichever disease you are choosing, why you are not choosing the rest, you have to give reason. Typhoid, it's Incorrect. Why? If the boy is suffering from typhoid, he should have sustained high fever. 39 to 40 degree का sustained high fever होना चाहिए. Chills are not there in typhoid. The other common symptoms are given here. It cannot be typhoid. Moving to next, that is viral fever. Viral fever में क्या होता है? He will suffer from high fever, but again there is no chills. Joint pain may be there, weakness is there, headache is there, but no chills and sweating. So it cannot be viral fever. So in this way, about each option, if you say yes or you'd say no, you have to give reason. Let's see the third one. If the boy is suffering from malaria, he should have high fever recurring every 3 to 4 days with profuse sweating and associated with chills and headache. So there is probability that the boy is suffering from malaria because of high fever and associated with chills. So the boy might be suffering from malaria. This way, for each part, you will get 1 mark. Moving to the next question. Your classmate complains of headache and cough. Okay, headache है और cough भी है. On the basis of certain symptoms. वो डॉक्टर के पास जाता है, डॉक्टर दूसरे सिम्टम्स भी ऑब्जर्व करता है एंड द डॉक्टर कंफर्म्स दैट ही इज सफरिंग फ्रॉम निमोनिया एंड नॉट कॉमन कोल्ड. डॉक्टर ने ये कंफर्म बता दिया कि निमोनिया है, कॉमन कोल्ड नहीं है. बॉय को क्या था? हेडेक और कफ था. ठीक है, लिस्ट दीज सिम्टम्स. तो आपको वो सिम्टम्स बताने हैं जो ये कंफर्म करते हैं कि ये निमोनिया है एंड नॉट कॉमन कोल्ड. ओके, सेकेंड पार्ट में आपको बताना है मेंशन एनी 2 precautions to be followed to prevent the spread of this disease. Any 2 precautions which can be taken so that the disease will not spread. As we know that both common cold and pneumonia, they are airborne diseases. They spread through air, droplet infection. ठीक है, दोनों के केस में precautions will be same. ठीक है, तो 2 प्रिकॉशंस बताने हैं जो डिजीज को स्प्रेड होने से रोके और दूसरे सिम्टम्स बताने हैं जो ये बताते हैं कि ये निमोनिया है और कॉमन कोल्ड नहीं है. ठीक है, तो द डॉक्टर कंफर्म्स निमोनिया ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ फॉलोइंग सिम्टम्स. As I told you, in severe cases, the lips and fingernails, they turn gray or blue. Then there is fever, chill, etc. Any 2 symptoms. And it is not common cold because there must not be any nasal congestion, sore throat and hoarseness. ठीक है, ये जो 3 symptoms हैं ये common cold में होते हैं because the common cold virus it affects your nose and respiratory pathway. So it is not seen in case of pneumonia. Precaution क्या है? Cover the nose when near the patient. We must wear a mask. Then the patient should also wear mask and do not share glass and utensil or other articles used by the infected person. So 2 precautions, half of mark each, and 2 symptoms which confirm that it is pneumonia. Symptoms that confirms that it is pneumonia and 2 symptoms which confirms that it is not common cold. So 2 symptoms, half of mark each, so that comes 3 marks. Last question. Show with the help of flow chart only life cycle of malarial parasite in humans. ठीक है, तो आपको फ्लो चार्ट के थ्रू मलेरियल पैरासाइट की लाइफ साइकिल ह्यूमंस में शो करनी है. इसमें आपको पूरा लाइफ साइकिल ड्रॉ करने की जरूरत नहीं है. यू शुड शो ओनली द पार्ट विच इज टेकिंग प्लेस इनसाइड द ह्यूमन बॉडी. So starting from the bite of mosquito, then liver cells, how they burst and sporozoites are released, how these sporozoites attack RBC and again asexually reproduce and released from the RBCs and causes fresh infection of RBCs and later on changes into gametocyte. So all these stages you have to mention. ठीक है? यहाँ पे the question can be asked in many different ways, but the answer is same. Name the form of plasmodium that gain entry into the human body. Human body में entry होती है sporozoites के form में. Mosquito में entry होती है gametocytes के form में. So it can be asked in other way also, like explain the different stages of its life cycle in mosquito body. आपको mosquito body वाला part draw करना है. So these are all questions. You can go through them and prepare them for your final exam. I will be back with next revision lesson soon. So study all the questions and all the topics, learn all the topics properly. Thank you.